like to open tonight's meeting for Town of Rutland's HPDD Review Board for July 27th at 6:30. Present here tonight is Vice Chair Jim Purington, members Michelle Van Riet and Dick Williams. Doug Briggs is not attending tonight. He's at his daughter's wedding. I hope he's having a wonderful time there.
Sure Amen on that.
So first up, myself, Chris Hennicle, and Tamika Murphy is doing the minutes. And also Dave George, who was the town planner here, and is probably going to lead most of this meeting tonight as we get into things. But first up on the agenda is the meeting minutes from July 13th. I just had one little thing I'd like to add, Tamika. I believe it's the third page, up at item number 18. On the very last line, well, the last sentence says the board was amenable to that, but wanted to note in writing that they would allow one if the residents. This is regarding the dumpsters, and in one of the parking spaces. If you could just add in there in a parking space, because we'd allow them to put a dumpster in a parking space, if they needed one for an event or otherwise. And that's the only change I have. Anybody else have anything?
Well, I tell you what, why don't I make a motion to accept the minutes of July 13th, 2022?
All right.
I'll second that.
Now, is there discussion? We'll put
All right.
what you had just talked about into it.
All right. Is there any discussion?
Well, yes, there is. Question I have for you on the second page, 5, 6, and 7. Third line down, and the applicant will keep the town informed on a storm water permit. Who in town? The weights and measure person? Can we add DPW? No, you don't want to be?
Conservation Commission for now.
Okay,
I mean, you can copy us, but it should go to the Conservation Commission.
that's what I want. I want something, who it is.
Is that in the is that in one of the conditions? And what does it state in the condition? In the Concom it is? Okay. Is that in one of our orders of conditions or any of our things,
It's in your in the draft conditions.
It is? Okay.
It is, yeah.
Does it reference the Conservation Commission?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Just as long as it's the same everywhere.
Same,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes,
Thank you,
it
thank you
does,
guys for your help. Anything else, Dick?
There was that, I'm gonna bypass that, it was about stone dust. I do believe, number 22 on that thing, I could have sworn, didn't you, gentlemen, there will be no oil or propane and no condition was needed or something like that? I thought you dropped that.
I suggested that it be dropped.
You suggested it.
I think they've made it clear that what they're gonna do initially is put in the gas,
The heat pumps.
the heat pumps.
Heat pumps.
Yeah.
But
This
you-
would outlaw anything in the future.
right, that's what.
And,
yeah, we got
and
rid
to
of
me,
that.
for crying out loud,
we clearly got rid of that.
Yeah, so the condition is out.
the condition is out.
They're just stating what they're doing, but we're not directing them that they must do anything. That's the way I understand this.
But should it reflect that in here, in the minutes?
Well,
Will it reflect in the new
I
one?
think it does.
Pardon?
I think I stated that there was no condition needed.
Yeah. So no condition is needed.
No condition is needed.
It's
okay.
shown, yeah. Yeah, no condition was needed.
All right, okay.
All right.
31, I had a erosion control, stormwater discharge, previous addressed conservation. Was advised that the work would work with the DPW. Anyways, I put down here, because it's the RDIC's land, should they be there also? Just add in where it says that. DPW.
I'm sorry, item number 31.
Yeah.
He's just saying that Wes advised that they would work with the DPW and the RDIC to mediate the additional flow out of the 12-inch pipe that leads to the pond. So just add in the RDIC as well, not just the DPW. Anything else, Dick?
And the other thing is, no, I'll leave that alone. I'm all set, thank you.
My comment on 18 is previously stated. Just for the record too, Doug, in an email to everybody, said he had no issues or comments and accepted these minutes as they were. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting the minutes from the July 13th meeting as amended? Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Next up on the agenda is the public hearing, the continuance of the public hearing for Hyperclassic Homes definitive site plan for the proposed 55 and over community up at the Rutland Heights Way. This is continued from July 13th. Welcome, everybody. First up, Joe was so nice to come out here tonight and meet us in last minute's notice, and I know he had another family issue, so we got some things to go over, but one particular thing I'd just like to kind of get things out of the way with him so he can move along for this evening. And it's basically about the flow test, Joe. That's one thing we wanted to talk about. So I understand there's been a new flow test, and in general, personally, I don't know how to really read this test to know if it's right, good, bad, or indifferent. And so we're just kind of looking to you, Joe, to see if it meets the requirements, for fire, protection up there as well as general water.
Okay, I'll do my best to put it in plain English.
Sure.
All right. So, and I talked with Wes at length today, and they're going to put together an email or a letter to get to you to document everything we discussed.
Okay.
So their engineering staff looked at what they would need using state sanitary code to supply water to the development as proposed, and then they looked at the necessary fire flows, and fire flows were more, and they used that as a guiding principle to do their design, which is pretty standard. Flow tests were done at the dead end line on Maple, and they were okay but not robust enough to feel confident, so they also did a flow test on the dead end line that comes in from Main Street that supplies the schools. And that performed much better.
So those don't connect up.
They currently don't connect.
Okay.
But when I talked with Wes, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman, I want to say Miller, the engineer,
Miller, yep.
who's working on the water flows. They modeled it going forward, connecting those two pipes and taking some bends out to improve flow. And that produced a much better, they modeled it based on that, basically, to determine if it would provide the fire flows necessary and the flow necessary to support the pressures to support the development as proposed, and it looks good. Professionally, as a water person, I think it's great. Anytime you can get rid of dead-end lines, and you can, it doesn't build up solids, it improves water quality, and in the event of an emergency, if we had to shut a line down, you'd still have some flow going in there.
Yeah.
So I asked Wes again, who from their staff had reviewed that, and I made sure that person is a Massachusetts PE, and that person is. And I'm just waiting on an email from them, and I guess that person's up in Maine, so I should have something tomorrow. But engineering-wise, based on the conversation and the numbers I reviewed, as long as that loop is put in place and they being the developer tie in as proposed, I think they'll be all right.
So the connection, you're saying those two lines need to
Right.
connect?
Yep.
Okay, both dead lines, and then defeating that.
That's a benefit for the town overall as well as the development. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Joe, I got a question. I noticed that on the test it was done on Naquag, the two hydrants at Naquag. Why wasn't one done down at the central school?
It was mislabeled. It was Central School.
It was?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
I can, so it was the closest hydrant to the development.
Yeah.
That's what we flow,
All right.
which is at the Central Tree Middle School.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I apologize. So the gentleman that did the reports, for some reason, I noticed that today too, and I was printing up copies of it. He did label it as Naquag instead of the Central Tree Middle School. So
Okay.
it was done at the end there.
So again, based on the conversations and the numbers I reviewed, as long as it's looped and tied in as proposed, I think it's going to be fine. I asked them to get us something in writing to document it going forward. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, well, yeah, it certainly sums up this report. And Wes, I mean, do you have anything to add to that? Is that pretty much the nuts and bolts of this?
Yeah, yep, exactly, yep. And so,
Okay, and one question for everybody, who's gonna do this connection?
The developer.
The developer will do that, okay. Is that on the plans right now?
So I show the end that's closest to the site, I do show some detail to how that's gonna be reworked, but I don't show the school end of it, because we don't have existing conditions part of the school yet, so that
Okay.
is something we will need to add and have reviewed by the DPW.
Where does that loop end at the school? Whereabouts is that in the parking lot?
I don't know if it shows well on the map here.
Does that come down does that come down Central Street towards your property?
So the parking lot, I know it's kind of small.
Yep, no, I see it.
So you have the,
Oh,
kind
on
of
the front,
almost at the
yes.
far end of the parking lot, it bends out to the back.
Yep.
And so in the back, there's actually an 8-inch line, but through the parking lot, it's a 10-inch main.
Oh, wow.
And so what we're looking to do is put a reducer on the end of the 10-inch and then bring it to 8-inch all the way into the site and tie the 8-inch back into where the 8-inch ends here.
Okay.
Actually, at the end of the Rutland Heights Way, there's a reducer on that. It goes from 8-inch to a 6-inch, couple bends into the hydrant. So we're gonna replace a little bit of that end of it.
Okay.
Get rid of the reducer at the end of this main, turn that back into an 8-inch, and then tie that into and then loop that back into the 10-inch.
Okay.
And really what it happened is, it's an 8-inch in Maple Ave, 8-inch up Rutland Heights Way, and I think it's 16 out in 122A or
It
something
is
like that.
16 out,
16
122.
So that feeds a 10-inch into the school property.
Into the school.
And that's not restricting the flow as much as the 8-inch in Maple Ave, and it's gotta be an older pipe too in Maple Ave, correct?
I'm sorry?
The 8-inch in Maple Ave's probably an older pipe too, correct?
Actually, not that bad. I
Not
want
that
to say
bad,
the
okay.
90s,
Alright, so,
1990s.
and I know this one's early 2000s, so.
Yeah, when they did that
Yeah,
road,
so-
yeah. That's
But,
pretty-
you know, the one on Maple doesn't see a lot of action.
Right,
I mean, not Maple, I'm sorry, Rutland Heights Way, because there's really
Yeah.
nothing there.
There's been nothing there, right, yeah.
right.
Okay, and again, just to, so I'm clear, the engineer, these folks here from Haley and Ward, they've done the calculations that putting this 8-inch in and taking a couple things out is gonna give us everything that you're satisfied with. They just haven't done a report yet to formalize, is that correct?
And it's not a huge report, it's just a
Just
letter.
a letter.
So,
or
yeah, we're just
whatever.
looking for an email.
You just haven't
around.
documented
Yep.
that, and, okay.
Yep.
And then your design would reflect their comments.
Correct, so my plans already show what we're gonna do for improvements.
Oh, okay,
At least with the part right next to the site.
okay.
And I can show you that on one of the other sheets.
The rest of it's just run the 8-inch line to
And-
wherever
And
the 8-inch
put a
line is.
reducer, yeah, and put a reducer in from an 8-inch to a
Yeah.
10-inch.
And just to be clear, most of it isn't for providing water to the development, it's to meet fire flow requirements.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's
yeah,
common.
that's,
And that's common,
yeah,
that's not unusual.
yeah, and you know, I mean, that property, that height, you know, that property up there with the right wind, which we all know how windy Rutland is. If something got going up there, those buildings are pretty tight.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure there's too many men that are gonna jump in the middle of that thing anyways. It's just gonna be a matter of containing it, not
Yeah.
trying to put something out if, you know, something really got rolling up there with the right northwest wind. But anyways, okay, so, Joe, you don't feel we need to have Quinn or anybody else review this? I mean, I trust you personally. I don't think there's any reason to have anybody else review this if you
No, the
Right?
only one who needed to sign off on it would be the fire chief, and as long as the engineer, the design engineer is able to meet the flows required by the fire chief, I think you'll be fine.
He'll be fine with that, okay. All right.
I'm happy too, and I'm gonna cross off my thing right here, water tower. So you don't be hung with water tower.
concerned quite a while.
All right, does anybody on the board, Jim, please.
I feel that, given the level of Quinn Engineering's review for this whole project, I mean, they reviewed trees and shrubs, that they definitely should review this. And I would be willing to make it that whatever is put together, that if Quinn reviews it with no conditions, no reservations, it meets whatever language they typically use, not at our discretion, that they agree totally, then it's fine.
Jim Quinn's last letter.
I really do think we need, this is an important, a big issue, and to not run it by Quinn, I think is a mistake. So therefore, either we have a condition to run it by Quinn, or I will probably not vote for it tonight.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I think if this had been done, the water test was done the 14th, and if the report had come out a few days afterwards, it would have given time for Quinn to review it, and I really believe that they would have been asked to review it. Considering, I mean, it's like,
So we did send him the information. We did send Quinn the information
Okay.
though. And I sent him the plan, the most up-to-date plan.
You
And
did.
Quinn actually issued a letter on July 25th. And I do show
And where does
the
it reference it? in
the
the letter?
extension. And so if you look at, their letter reflects the dates of the plan. And so the plan I sent them that had the water main extension on it was July 20th.
It's this one, it says one on the top, green.
And the
It's all green.
only change that was done on the 22nd had to do with the drainage pipe that they asked me to point out.
It's right
Okay,
there.
right there, okay, thank you.
But they didn't comment. The flow test line improvement must be reviewed and approved by the fire chief.
So it's number 19.
Yeah,
So
so
we
on
responded
the very
back
back
saying that-
page, item number 7, which you see comment 19.
Yep.
Fire flow testing and water line improvements must be reviewed and approved by the fire chief.
Correct.
Now, didn't he produce an email today?
Yeah, he
He
did.
did.
And then,
And so-
the
and so
comment
our-
below that is comment number, again, see comment number 1941, water line installation testing, et cetera, on its way and on the Central Property School
Conditions of
must be approved and coordinated with the water department. 41 just references that they should be approved by the appropriate town departments. Item 19, it is recommended that the board solicit comments from the fire chief regarding the adequacy of the access, primary and secondary, and proposed building separation. In addition, the fire chief indicated to his office that he would like fire flow testing conducted. This office defers to the board. This, regarding the fire chief's comments regarding fire flow testing, then they put resolved. It is understood that the fire chief has commented and flow testing has been conducted. Fire flow testing and water line improvements must be coordinated with the fire chief. So Quinn's kind of kicking it out to the fire chief, which is normal.
Yeah.
It's not, often, it's not really a requirement so much of a town, of a third-party engineer review. Sometimes if it was close, it would be. But
Okay, so can I ask David, are you comfortable that Quinn has evaluated the most recent test flow and basically is making no comments? No comments or recommendations other than what's suggested in here, which is that the fire chief has to say?
What I'm comfortable saying is that seems to be standard with the fire chief and the DPW director would be the ones to act as peer type of reviewers based upon their expertise. And that, I think what you have is a workable solution that's been outlined here. I believe the fire chief is on board with this approach of the loop as well. So I'm not sure a peer review is necessary. I think Quinn is looking for the fire chief and DPW to review, because this is within their expertise, and that is standard practice.
Okay. Before I made my comments, I had not noticed the information on the last page of here and so on, so.
well, no, Jim, I mean, it's a good-
Indicating that they have looked at it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with your concern that this is a major issue here. And, we just need to make sure, number one, water for the people is gonna be sufficient, which, for the DPW, Joe, he says that's more than suffice. But the really ultimate thing is the fire protection, and where there's no sprinklers here, there wouldn't be, even if, just to take this another case further, where the fire department signs off on every commercial job. If this was a commercial building where you had to do sprinklers, then that's done by the contractor, their engineer does that review, they do a flow test, and all that gets approved before the fire department gives them a permit for installing the sprinklers. So you have to have the proper flow test. So that never goes to a third-party engineer review or anything. That's just done between the sprinkler engineer and the fire chief, and they just make sure they have the fire chiefs are very knowledgeable about flow.
Yes, and to this point about fire chiefs being knowledgeable about flow, there was an email distributed from the fire chief to the engineer,
Yep.
where the fire chief provided the flow data based upon the fire chief's model, which
Okay.
was an input into.
So what he was looking for, Dave?
What he's looking for. And so part of what Joe was talking about, us emailing Joe just our findings in an official email
Yep.
signed by the gentleman that did the actual calculation. As part of that, I did also send him that email that the fire chief sent, so he's gonna add that into his email.
So
he
basically, the
addresses
fire
both
chief
of
said, if you're within this parameter,
Correct.
you got
That's
2
exactly
thumbs up
right.
here.
Now,
Correct.
that
And
email
it was within that parameter, Joe?
As far as I know, yes. And the other thing I was gonna say is
Yep.
that I was very specific when I talked to Wes. The person who signs off on that is a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That person's license on the job is on the line,
Yeah.
and they take that very seriously. So I'm sure they wouldn't be signing off on it if that wasn't the case.
Okay, so, any other comments regarding that?
Chris, I've got one question. Since it appears as though the developer's gonna be working off on the town's property, is there anything we need to do to deal with that, Joe? You know, I mean, because I guess what I'm hearing is they're gonna be down on the school property connecting this water, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything we need to do to
We
make
should
that happen?
we would do a right of entry.
Okay, I don't know, I'm just,
If there wasn't already, do you mind if I go ahead, Chris?
Oh, please do, Joe, it's informal, just, we're all good
If
here.
there wasn't talk of some thought of extending the road or developing that as a road at some point, I would strongly suggest you take an easement, even though it's town property, in case it's ever turned over. But because the plan is to at some point consider that a road, I think a right of entry would suffice.
okay, as long as you're happy.
Just as anybody would tying into
Right.
a water line.
You're familiar with a
You
conventional.
come off your private property and you gotta get onto the public to
Right.
tie into the water
But
main, so.
in this case, because it's for school purposes, even though it's owned by the town, it's not like it's a park. So you just want
Yeah.
to develop a right of entry so that someone knows you're there,
Yeah.
okay? And tie into the water main and extend it. And if for whatever reason, we don't decide to go forward with a road at some point, we could take a formal easement,
Okay.
okay?
All right, one last question to particularly Joe and Wes, the authorities here. This is a 3-phase project. And is there any, so Joe, 3-phase project, they're gonna have, you got a total of like about 88, 84 condos here, 70, whatever it is.
142.
142 total units,
yeah.
and they're all duplexes, right? So 71 duplexes. And they're gonna build them in 3 phases, Joe. You know, a group of like 20 of them first, and then like another 40, and the final grouping. Is there any issue with having to have this connection done before they build 1 unit? Or, you know, could they put 20 units on first with not having it? Like, what's the timing, what should the timing be of this water line connection?
I would do it right away.
Thank you.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Do you agree?
Because the first phase is the highest point of that development.
Okay. Okay, now you two guys.
And that's what dictates really the fire flow, is the highest point. Anything lower, it wouldn't be an issue, but that,
Sure, and that's, yeah, those phases go down.
Correct.
Great point, Wes. Yeah, so that's pretty common sense there.
But why would
Okay.
you want to cut it after either?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So, full test report seems pretty good then. Just waiting for some documentation.
Yes. And
We got a plan? All right, so Dave, we just gotta kind of draft that up that way with, you know, if we decide to vote on this tonight, we can vote on this tonight, can we just make this a condition?
So I guess, that was gonna be my recommendation, that's what Peter and I were talking about. We thought actually, item number 41 in Quinn Engineering's initial, I don't know if it followed through on the other ones. We thought that was gonna be a condition of approval. His comment is, utility installation and connections to the existing utilities must be coordinated with the appropriate town departments. And that's what we kind of always thought that was gonna be one of the conditions of approval, because that's fairly standard on any kind of development, no matter commercial, residential, whatever it is. So-
Especially because we gotta get a water connection permit from the DPW anyway.
Yeah, so I do have that, that's from April 20th. I have that on April 20th, that's a
Right.
Quinn.
And he Quinn addresses that in his 25th letter too.
Yes,
Right.
I think we're talking about language for a
You're not there
condition.
But I'm thinking that
You're not
there
would just
yet.
be the link to the condition.
Not even close.
So the language of the condition being.
You gotta get that
you
new
want
main
it
in.
from
Well,
local
That's
CFC.
gotta
we're
be
close,
Over
huh?
here.
Yeah.
Well, let me,
That's all right.
Dave, if I could ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do we need something in writing back from Seth, the fire chief, stating that, once this letter comes to him that, he's good, or is just what the letter he sent, is that good enough?
If
That,
you want
you're within these
confirmation,
parameters?
if you want confirmation from fire and DPW, we could work that into the condition.
What does the board think of that?
Have it in writing. Get good idea.
Well, and that's why we were I think the language of that is, it covers all town departments, so
So,
no matter if we're talking about water, sewer, whatever it is, at least we're,
But, yeah, I mean, I just, my concern to that, Wes, is that, in a few months from now or something, when someone goes to get a water permit, this conversation is not on the forefront of Joe's mind, or even your own, these folks' mind. I mean, when Ron goes to get his thing, and then, I don't know, does this thing get, die off somewhere?
I think I'd like to be maybe more specific than.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit more important than just getting a regular permit in town, you know what I mean?
and that's what, yeah.
So
And that's
maybe,
my opinion,
why don't we see if maybe Mr. Campobasso might want to take a crack at some language for here. If you agree with it, then I'll just bring that into the decision with my final edits tomorrow. After you sign, you can sign it tonight.
Okay,
This will be a condition that gets added,
okay.
and then it'll be then recorded with the town clerk. So Peter?
so the only thing I was gonna say was the email that was generated this afternoon by the fire chief. He assumed certain conditions because he didn't have a full set of the building plans. And he made some assumptions, and he put in calculations to come to a number to prove adequate fire flow. And he ended his email by saying, "Is this correct?" So my suggestion would be that if the same engineer is gonna sign off the DPW, they
Oh,
have
he's,
them.
he's also looking at the fire, so I forwarded that
Yeah,
off to him.
so he can submit the same letter
Okay.
and certify that,
Yeah.
yes, so that this will give you some comfort.
Okay.
I did have a brief conversation with the fire chief, and my understanding was he was conservative.
In his calculations?
Yeah,
Well,
I
in his
think
concerns,
so too,
in his
yes.
concerns, yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to what you said, proximity of buildings and the like.
Yes. Okay, so,
So, Peter, you'd like to take a crack at this condition for this instance here? I mean, maybe we could add on to 41. I'll take 41 as the basis. Utility installations and connection to the existing utilities must be coordinated with the appropriate town departments. And then another sentence that addresses this particular issue.
is this board comfortable with that dynamic of language and lettering? And let me just clarify that. This engineer from Haley and Ward is gonna draft this letter that he's, like Joe said, he's putting his PE on the line saying that this meets the requirements of the fire chief as well as the DPW. And, based on the requirements they gave him. And so that way we don't need any kind of sign-offs from anybody else in town. We're just saying that he's putting his neck on the line saying he's meeting the requirements. Are we good with that as a board?
I think we have to reference more details, and I think as a starting point, it would be referencing the email that Attorney Campobasso said, which is dated today. And what we're looking for is a letter from the fire chief for the record that
Has that email / letter, excuse me if I may, has that, because I haven't seen that personally.
No, that was
So
not, that was not in, I didn't believe that was intended for the board. I thought that was an internal discussion of a technical nature
Right,
between the fire chief, he wasn't drawing a conclusion. He was giving them some specification.
Some guidance to go by.
And then that
And that's
specification
fine.
was to be worked into their calculation. That's why it was not submitted, because I thought it was more of a technical discussion.
And I totally understand,
Yeah.
Dave, I had no issue with that. But from our perspective, we're kind of signing off on something that we haven't seen.
Right.
And that's it makes you a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. To
Sure.
Jim's concerns, I mean,
So,
something that's not been a public document, now we're gonna base
yeah,
it on that.
there are a number of different requirements, so I guess we look at when we look at the water system, and when we look at fire flow, the old standard used to be, 750 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. And then as the years have gone on, it's been 1,000 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. And then the fire chief also looked at it a different way, because of the proximity of the buildings, type of construction, he also wants to make sure there's enough volume within the system for a certain time frame. And so that's why he did that calculation. He wants to make sure that we gave him the data in a gallons per minute at a certain pressure. He wants to also make sure that there's enough volume within the system for a certain time frame to meet the other requirements that he has to also look at. And so as part of our response, we're also going to respond back to that email.
Okay.
But like, again, we just got that email this afternoon, so I forwarded all that off with Mr. Buckley's request also to the gentleman that did the analysis for us at our other office, and to have him look at it and then put an official email back to it. He's gonna send it to me, and I'll forward it off to Mr. Buckley and the fire chief, and then CC David on that. And so, however that condition needs to be worded, but that's the intent. But after he ran his numbers, the numbers are, from the school side, we're way above what we need.
What'd you have for, how many gallons would you have?
So we were looking at, even when we did the flow test, should I have this here? When we did the flow test at the school, like it came back,
1,500?
more than that actually. So we were at 20 PSI, that's typically what, like when we're looking at the flow graph, 3,054 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. So, but again, it's a 10-inch line being fed by a 16-inch
Yeah.
line.
I see.
There's,
Yeah.
in-
So at about 75, you're at 750.
yeah, and even from a layman, when we opened the hydrant down on Maple Ave, it wasn't coming out even close to being at the pressure that we opened the hydrant up at the school, and you could tell the difference. Even just looking at you didn't have to put a gauge on it, you could tell the difference of the pressure coming out of those hydrants, so.
All right.
Chris, I guess, doesn't the fire chief have to sign off on the permit anyway? Like,
Occupancy
doesn't,
purposes,
doesn't the fire chief have to sign off on this stuff anyway? Like, so he wouldn't, he
Well-
also have to make sure that it's done?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to get a fire, smoke detector permits,
Right.
okay? And that's all. There's not gonna be sprinkler systems in these. So with a sprinkler system, again, there'll be another flow test with that contractor,
Right.
but that's not gonna happen because there's no sprinkler here. So pretty much this test is done and over with. And, I'm just,
I see.
it's gonna be, it's gonna be off everybody's mind, I mean, when he goes out there and inspect smoke detectors, he's not gonna be thinking about the fire hydrant
Flow.
pressure out
I
across the
see,
street, you know
okay.
what I mean?
Yeah,
He might, but, that's a hard ask.
I understand that, yep.
In a year from now, year and a half from now.
Okay.
So I think we agree that a condition is an order, so should we take a crack at drafting something that we could add onto this decision?
Is this board comfortable with that? With the condition being in order and just figuring out the language?
I thought there was consensus, I'm sorry if I.
No, I mean,
thought
there was,
consensus.
Yeah.
So-
listen, we're all just trying to work through this together here, but.
So I think what we're really after is the letter from Haley and Ward that confirms that the water flow test will be sufficient, or the projected water flow will be sufficient to serve the site. That's what I think ultimately.
Will be sufficient to meet the requirements given to you by the fire department and the DPW.
What I'm understanding, based on Wes and Joe's discussion today, that engineer or that person is gonna send a letter to that effect, because he's done the calculations, he just hasn't had a chance to respond.
3,000 gallons, I mean, I'm no expert on water flow, but I know 3,000 gallons is at 20 PSI is really good pressure
And then to your point,
for fire suppression.
I don't necessarily know what type of review you would want Quinn to do.
No, I'm past the Quinn review.
Oh, okay.
I think
all
he's
right.
also.
The next step after you just described would be the DPW and fire department,
Right.
fire chief confirm for the record that they agree with the,
So, if I can
and
take,
it's that simple.
can I take a crack at this
Yeah.
condition for you then? So, final design of water connection between end of Central Tree Middle School water main and end of Rutland Heights Way water main to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Works and Fire Department.
As per Haley Ward's letter and design, right?
Yeah, I put final design of, and then,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to request if you could draft that, then I will then work that into my
Should you go with that?
decision.
That's good, right?
All right.
Everybody in this board good with that?
Good.
All right,
Thank
good
you.
job.
I don't
Yeah.
read my writing now, I apologize.
I think it's good. If I have a question, I will follow up.
And that's reviewed and approved before
Yeah, and however you want to put before,
something.
or before endorsement of, and I don't know how,
Prior to building permit or something, is that possible? It should be, right?
It should happen within a week or two.
Right, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we just heard that this should happen as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So,
you wanna give like within 60
Water
days or
line,
something?
right?
Nothing's gonna happen.
The
I'll do it in
water
60
line.
days.
Water main, I put water,
Right, so
final
no.
line
Design
of
of
water
water.
connection. Water,
Connection?
yeah.
But you're right.
Will that include the?
Even if it does, it ain't gonna be.
That's what I'm talking, yeah.
Yeah,
They're
okay.
not gonna be.
The connection between the school main, is what I said, and the Rutland Heights way main.
Within 60 days, is that good, Jim? So, you know,
And really, it's the other way around, the fire chief approves, because
Why did you
that's
say
what
that?
drives the bus, his flows.
Correct,
that we
yeah,
have.
yeah,
Mine are
exactly.
make sure
mine.
you
Yes.
agree tonight.
I worry about other
I wanna
things.
make sure
You
you're
want to
right.
use ductile?
Okay.
Yes,
You gotta make sure
Right.
bacteria pressure tests. Stupid stuff like that.
My kids give me that death stare.
Well,
Watch
That
out.
happens when you go to bed.
Thank you,
You don't
thank
wanna
you for
put it-
worrying about the
now
students.
you have a time limit,
I know the
time. Within a certain amount of time.
PFAS?
PFAS.
That's
Prior to
brutal.
commencement of construction.
Yeah, I would say
I have a
prior to
site, they put a
commencement of
well on.
construction.
And that's the well we shut down.
Would you-
Right.
Yeah, yep, excellent. Everybody's agreeing with that?
Yeah, before they put a shovel in the
We're
ground.
good with, yeah, yeah.
You mark
Prior
my
to
words.
commencement.
All right,
Excellent. Very good.
it's better than 60.
That PFAS.
All right, so
Yeah.
that's the,
Yeah.
we're good with the flow test then, right?
The mess.
Any other comments, issues, complaints, concerns? I think that does it for me personally. I think we can move along. Joe, you're welcome to stay. You
Oh,
know,
I'm good.
but, I'm sure you got, sound like you have other things to do, so. Thank you for coming tonight, really appreciate it, Joe.
Thank you.
That was a big help on getting this thing over the goal line here, so
Yeah.
greatly appreciated.
How you making out with the road?
Haven't really heard much back on that yet.
Okay.
I know Gary was gonna be doing some work on some things, and I haven't heard back. And I've been, pretty out straight over the last couple of weeks, I barely got to this meeting tonight, so.
Thank you for your kind words. Guys, have a good night.
All right.
You good?
Take care.
Appreciate it.
All right. So that's good, we'll get that all set, beautiful. All right, at this point, unless you guys have anything new to submit, I think we just kinda go through Dave's decision that he's drafted, and we just kinda go through that. I would like Dave, so Dave, been really busting his tail on this week. He sent out a few different renditions. I know he's been gone back and forth with you, Attorney Campobasso, and you've given some comments, and he's adjusted some things there. So I'd just like to kind of turn it over to Dave, if you would, and just kind of bring us up to where we've been, what you've been working on. We know you've been working hard.
All right, thank you. So a decision's been drafted on this matter. The decision is in a standard format, which is typical for permits like this. In particular, it has a waiver section, which the waivers were agreed upon previously. So those waiver section is in here. The next main item would probably be the conditions. So the conditions were developed from a draft at a meeting or so ago, which had a total of 32 items on it. At the prior meeting, it was determined that some of the stuff would show up on the plan set, so therefore it didn't need to be a condition, and it could be struck from the list. Those things that remained were to be listed as conditions. Those items were carried forth as conditions. Some of the language was formalized from the original list. This decision was then circulated to town council. 2 town council members looked at it and had minor comments. The decision was also distributed to the applicant. The applicant had some revisions. The revisions overall were minor in nature, and those decisions were added to the decision. The board was provided with the revisions on the conditions from the applicant. There were 2 rounds. I think the only issue outstanding, and I'm not sure if you need for me to go through these line by line, you have them. It reflects what the will of the board was. The applicant has them and has reviewed them. It has no significant issue, with the exception of one item. And this has to do with some kind of a conversation that happened. As you recall, one of the conditions was to have a rumble strip. And maybe Wes can pick up this and further this conversation.
16.
Number 16.
Item
So,
16.
as written, it said rumble strips shall be added to the ways within the site development area. I guess there was some conversation afterwards that having rumble strips may create an adverse effect to people who are directly near the rumble strips. And there was a suggestion made to have some traffic mitigation and calming techniques, including but not limited to rumble strips. So maybe you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so, and I I guess I didn't think too much of it either when it came up during the meeting, because everybody kind of agreed to it. I had a conversation with Sam, who was the engineer that came and presented about the traffic from TEC, about locations and spacing of rumble strips. And he actually recommended against using rumble strips in a development like this, because of the noise that's created when you drive over rumble strips when they're this close to residences. And it's something that actually has come up. He's had some more experience with them. Said it's actually a negative with the rumble strips. Easier to maintain during the, obviously with snow removal, and that was kind of the reason that we came up with the rumble strips.
Sure.
But it isn't necessarily a positive, I guess, with regards to the noise. And so that's why when we were looking at the conditions of approval after we talked to Sam, we I guess wanted to leave some leeway there if the applicant didn't want to do rumble strips, instead they wanted to use speed humps or speed bumps or an alternative of a traffic calming device. But it was something that, after talking to Sam, it was something that even he said, he'd like to kind of look at the development after it was built, or at least significantly built, to see really if there's a need for the traffic calming devices, to see what the speed of the traffic is within the development.
Yeah, I
and
think
to kind of get a better idea of the spacing, for if there was a need for that type of stuff. Or maybe it's a temporary thing that can be removed during the winter months, where I know some of the speed bumps you can kind of take out and you kind of work around during plowing season.
Yeah.
So as a result, we're looking for this board to help make a decision regarding condition number 16, whether it should stay as written or be modified as proposed by the applicant with the latest information that they have from the traffic engineer.
And Dave put this in a brief email to us today, or yesterday. My opinion of the speed control, I think it's a necessity, Wes, and I know you kind of hinted that you may not need it, the traffic engineer suggested that. But he may not be taking into consideration that we've given you the waiver to put the sidewalk right up against the curbing.
Right.
And that is a concern to me, because you don't have that buffer anymore.
Yep.
And again, no one's going to be racing through this neighborhood for the most part, but I do think there should be some type of mitigation for that, to keep everybody at a good controlled speed within this development.
Sure.
It's a tight unit. You get driveways really close. Not a lot of room backing out. We just want to keep the speeds down and keep everybody safe there, pedestrians and people entering and exiting their personal driveways
Right.
onto the main driveways. That was my concern with the speed humps when we brought it up originally.
Yeah.
And we were flexible on what you want to do. I know you guys said the bumps, but then if we do those things, personally, I don't care what you do. I just want you to pick something. And I think, Ron, I hope you can appreciate this, but if we don't decide this tonight, you're going to have to make this decision when the asphalt trucks are on their way to the site. Right? So picture there's 10 asphalt trucks coming to the site, the pavement's set up, and you're going to make the decision. And I just suggest maybe just make it like you'd make it right then. And, pick a way, and I don't care what it is, but just pick something, let's roll with it and move on. So that's my opinion, but...
Peter and I talked briefly today about that. It's the fact that it's not a main road. I think that I personally feel the rumble strips still work, but Peter, what did we discuss on that earlier?
Well, my point was that Rutland Heights, the site is pretty off the,
Right.
traffic pattern. And it would seem that the traffic that's really going to be circulating within the site is the residents, their guests, and maybe deliveries. So I thought about what Wes had said and what Sam had said. I didn't participate in that conversation, but it would seem like it might be overkill to put something in there that you might put on a regular traffic way that you're trying to slow down traffic.
Yep.
So if there's something that you would be comfortable with, the board's comfortable with, that's not going to cause some type of detrimental impact to homes or units that are right next to a strip or a traffic bump, then that would be appropriate. If my position was, well, maybe we just don't need anything, because it's so off the beaten path, and it's not like there's going to be traffic that's trying to get from point A to point B, and now that Rutland Heights is developed, they can cut through it and get to miss a busy intersection or miss a traffic
It's not a
light.
cut through.
It definitely isn't a cut through. It seems like the traffic that's going to be up there is going to be minimal anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's the board's opinion? I state my opinion, I just, you know, if you three guys don't think we need it, I'll go along with you, it's not the end of the world here, but I just wanna make sure we're on the same page.
I think with a homeowners association, right, they'll have to have one. And if it becomes, if traffic is a problem and maybe the homeowners would take care of it after the fact.
That's not a bad idea.
I like it. That's my thought anyway.
Like it's a
so,
private drive, it's not
that's
a,
right.
it's not a town road,
It's
it's
not a
never
town-
gonna be a town road.
Right.
So I would think that, you know, if they're confident that it's not gonna be a safety hazard for the residents, even though we did put in there the tighter sidewalks and whatnot, I think the homeowners association would take care of it if there are problems with speeding or people driving carelessly.
It's a good point. Jim, do you have an opinion?
I thought what you said was right. It was tied in with, safety issues were raised about getting rid of the buffer between the sidewalks, which is why we agreed on this earlier. So to agree on it earlier and back off, I don't think is right.
Yeah. I think we,
But that said, I think, rumble strips are noisy, so if you decided not to do rumble strips, that's fine.
Wes, did the traffic engineer have any recommendation?
He didn't, he just said, we were talking more about rumble strips, and so when we talked about it, I said, kind of leave some leadway there and offer up a few different options, and then when we get to the point of the roads are built, maybe rumble strips are, if there's only a couple of them, maybe it's not a big issue, but if it's.
So if that condition didn't tie you to rumble strips,
And that's what we asked for, is just to give us
That's
the
what
ability
that's what the
to
intent was.
decide, yeah.
and then you maybe ask the traffic engineer for a recommendation.
well, I'm hearing two different things here. I'm hearing quantity, and then I'm hearing type. And I thought the quantity was on the plan.
It is not. Because even I asked him about spacing, and that's why, when I asked him about spacing, he's like, I don't see the need for it on this. I never showed him on the plan.
Okay.
I showed I showed stop bars, I showed all the signage that was required on here, but we never showed locations.
Okay.
And that was the initial conversation with him was, I was trying to get a spacing for what he asked, you know, what he would recommend for spacing. And he said he wouldn't use rumble strips, and second of all, he doesn't really see the need to even do any of the traffic calming devices on this type of development. But
It's a good thing I'm not up there, because if you had a speed bump, I'd
So-
go around it. Rumble strip, I'd go around it.
I don't wanna get ahead, because obviously we should go through the decision, but the way we forwarded, if you look at condition 16, we reworded it to read traffic calming devices, i.e. rumble strips, speed bumps, etc., shall be added to the ways within the site development area in locations recommended by the traffic consultant. This way here, it gives them a little flexibility to figure it out.
especially and I guess the problem there too is, we've kind of discussed all along, is we show driveways on there, but the driveway could get flipped to the other side of the building, depending on how the building is built, the garage is built, it could get flipped.
The sidewalks are on the outside of the corners, and
Yep.
the whole thing's a giant loop,
Yep.
you know?
Okay.
I'm
So
not too
we're-
worried about the straightaways, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so
on
we're
the
not
interior.
asking to eliminate it by the condition, we're just asking for some flexibility of what to put in.
Yeah,
Right.
I just think something before you come to a corner, coming down on those, particularly on those outside lines,
Right.
when you got the people walking right next to you. These aren't wide roads.
Right,
You know, they're driveways.
Yeah, they're 24
not
foot
full-
wide. Yeah.
Full roadways, and you got people walking right next to you.
Yeah.
People that don't hear all that well. So, you know, I'm not sure the person driving the car is gonna hear the speed bump, hear the speed, you know,
Right.
vibration. But, you know, I don't wanna make people's lives miserable if they listen to that thing all the time, but, I just think you need to have something, you know, coming into those corners. I don't think it's it's rocket science. I don't think we're trying to cure cancer here. I just think it's something pretty simple that, you know, 4 or 5 of these things around the loop here. And I just kinda look at you guys, I mean, we're pretty flexible on what you wanna do.
And that's all we were asking for,
Well,
the
You know,
commission, was
would like
flexibility
to
to
do something and make it chosen tonight. Like, I don't understand how difficult this
It
is.
does have it, yeah. So
Well,
I think we do have the condition, as just said before.
Yeah.
Traffic calming devices, including, for example, rumble strips, speed bumps, etc., shall be added to the ways within the site development area. So whatever, there's more than one type of technique that could be brought to bear on this.
so.
And I'm fine with that, but the thing about the recommended by the traffic consultant, you know, I think he has a different opinion of my concern. And I respect him, I think he's done a great job, but this is something that we talked about, we allowed this waiver to go. This is something we all agreed on, to Jim's point, this is something we agreed on. I don't feel we should go back on
You
allowing.
want to put a minimum amount in there, or a minimum of whatever, 4 or 5 throughout the site, or however?
So that's what I was just thinking, and at a minimum, they should be at certain locations, because there's
Yeah, I mean,
only,
I
there's
wouldn't
only,
think-
there's only certain
one coming
locations
into
where
this
someone
corner,
might be able
one
to
coming
really
into this
gain a
corner,
lot of speed.
One coming into this one, and then one up, you know, I don't even know if you need one up there, but maybe one there too.
Say a minimum of 3 or 4.
Yeah, I see a minimum of 4.
Okay.
And basically, Wes, just, you know, as you come into the 4 main corners.
Yep.
You know,
Right,
I mean,
because
the one long corner, you know, so I'm just putting this up here. You're coming in from up here, you got one coming into this corner here, then one coming into the big corner here, then another one here, and then another one there, before the roadway in that corner. Gets a little dicey there, all right?
plus that's where the,
Community center.
Community centers, that's a good point, yep, didn't think of that. So if you can just do those 4,
in the main,
and I don't care what you do personally, as long as those 4 are in there, I feel good about it. Jim, you all right with it?
Yes, I think just add somewhere, maybe in parentheses, minimum of 4.
What I want to do is ask the applicant to draft that, and then we can just
Reword 16 with that?
reword 16 if you could.
I'm fine with that.
Nice up here.
Can you put a minimum of 4?
Well, let me ask you, Mike has a suggestion on the table, let me ask him this way. So as proposed, as traffic calming devices, i.e. rumble strips, speed bumps, etc., shall be added to the ways within the site development area in the locations recommended by the traffic consultant TEC Inc., comma, a minimum of 4 such traffic calming devices?
I'm fine with that.
At a minimum of 4 on the, yeah.
A minimum of 4, I'm fine with that. Yep.
Okay, then I'll just do that then.
and then what Ron was asking me is, once it's turned over to the homeowners association, if they determine that they don't like the particular, and they want to change it,
Yeah,
would they have the ability to change it?
absolutely. Again, I think you can put that, they can put the bump or put the grooves, I don't care what they,
There
again,
you go.
you know, we're flexible on what way you want to deal with this.
Right. We'll do it one way.
Yep.
They have the ability, if
I got
it's
no,
too much.
personally, I have no problem with that. Is the board good with that? As long as they're
Right.
maintaining some
Yeah.
type of device there?
Right.
No problem at all, Ron.
At a minimum at those 4 locations.
Yep.
Well, I don't have the locations down, I have a minimum of 4 such traffic calming devices located in the site development area.
Okay.
That's good.
Before the 4 corners. Right, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's where the issue is the cars
Right.
coming into that corner, the people on the outside there. You know, I think it's pretty safe to say. I mean, those little straightaways in between there, that's fine. You know, I'm not worried about that.
I don't know what the corners means without having reference to a plan.
He referenced on.
Prior to the 4 corners on the main, or the outside.
The outside,
The
outer
outside.
the outside roadway.
You wanna write that, Peter?
Yeah, you
I
might as
gotta-
well,
I'll mark it up real quick.
you might as well, you see.
I'm gonna make it on my,
I'll make it on yours, and,
yeah,
all right, thank you. I think it's easier this way with the just capture this way.
Absolutely, Dave. I like your style, man. Getting it done and getting it done tonight. Let's get through it. While they're working on that, do you want to go through everything here in this decision? Are we good with any, do we need any, do we have any more questions on the decisions or what Dave has provided us to sign off on tonight? I don't think, I'll ask Dave, but I don't think there's any other major issues that we needed to work out.
I just want to try to clarify a few things within the decision.
All right, and Dave, you good with that, right?
Sure, so on this condition, can we just draft this first and then
Yep.
go back in?
Okay, I was gonna put it on mine, type it in and email it to you, so that you had it.
Well, if you like.
All right, or I can just write it on
Yeah,
your.
if you do it that way, I mean, I'm just gonna copy it verbatim here.
Okay, I wrote it down, I'll put it on yours before I go.
Right, fair enough. Outside of that, there's no other issues on the conditions. The conditions have been mutually agreed to.
Where,
The
where's the water test?
water flow test,
Where's that gonna be added?
it's gonna be added as a
As a
condition.
condition.
Right, okay, it's a condition, right?
It's not on this right now, so.
So what I've done here, I have the main copy of this. So the signature sheet is separate, so what I propose is sign it tonight. I will make these changes first thing in the morning, distribute it to everybody, and then file it with the town clerk.
Okay, then everything that Peter's doing, we can get it all together.
So,
Okay,
so,
that's,
so having said that, what do you have
Okay, so
issues with here?
if you could go to page 4 of the decision.
Yep.
15, large A, small a. Project consists of, with the purposes set out in section 23. The project is proposed as a senior housing development with 142 single-story duplex units. It's actually 71 duplex units.
I apologize, I took that from
Right,
your
so
findings of facts here.
I just want to make sure that we understand that it's 71 duplex units for a total of 142.
That's fine.
Okay, so.
it's funny, because I remember seeing that 88, Peter, and that's what was, when I was talking earlier, I was, 88, wait, that's not 142.
I'll probably just say 142 total dwelling units and call it a day.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we understood it was a total of 142 dwelling units.
Yep, that's fine. Okay, what else?
Under the conditions, number 2, I don't know if they've got the revisions to incorporate, but right now it reads, "The project site shall be developed and constructed in substantial conformance with the site plan," with the plan set titled formal site plan. We just wanted to insert the word in there, with the site plan set titled formal site plan. So I can make that correction and email it to Dave, if that's okay.
What's this change? Substantial conformance with the,
He's just adding the word site at the end of the first line,
Yeah, so that it
on item
reads,
number 2 in the order of conditions.
so that it reads in substantial conformance with the site plan set titled formal site plan.
if you'd like.
I
Okay,
have no issue with that.
yeah, I can add that, yep. What else?
So, condition 4, right now on the site plan, plans were presented for the individual units, but there's no plan or design right now for the community center. And what we discussed in the past was, the community center might be 2,800 square feet, it might be 2,600 square feet, not 3,000 square feet, depending on what the final design is. So we just want to make sure that, since there's nothing specific on the site plan itself, the way I explained this to Ron was, well, if you come in and the building's smaller, as long as you are within the site plan or the foundation plan that's shown on the site plan, that should be fine. They wouldn't need to come in for a change or anything like that. You understand my point?
Yes. The only concern with that, Peter, I would have is how much smaller. You
Right.
know.
So the way-
That's a little ambiguous, you know what I'm saying?
So the way I explained it to Ron was that we could utilize the provision in the conditions that any change to the site plan, the applicant can present. If the board determines it's a minor change, we don't need to have a hearing, we can just proceed.
Yeah.
If it's a major change, then you'd have to have a hearing and make a decision on whether you're gonna allow the change to the plan.
That's more than fair enough. Any of the board have any concerns with that?
Oh, I like it.
I'm fine with that language.
Well, we had that as a condition in here already about the changes from
Yeah.
major and minor. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So,
I have that. I mean, we never really got into detail about the community center.
No, we didn't.
You
Where
know,
does it
we-
reference the size of the community center anyway?
On the site plan, it shows a 3,000
Okay.
square foot
Gotcha.
footprint,
Yeah.
like a foundation footprint. So that's all it shows.
And just a quick question, but why would it get smaller, like?
I was gonna ask the same question.
I'm sorry, you're asking me a question.
If you're showing about an approximately 3,000 square foot footprint,
Right, that's what we're showing. We're not gonna exceed it, but we may come down a little bit, but I'm not sure because I'm thinking overhangs, but we wanna fit within that footprint.
all right,
So
Yeah,
the
you're
building
talking
may be
overhangs
26 or
and,
28.
some eyebrows coming around, something like that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't-
Places to be able to sit outside under an overhang. type of
I
thing.
mean, quite honestly, in my opinion, I just assume that be, any overhang could extend and overhang outside that footprint, Ron.
Oh,
It's
really?
just, that, I would be fine with that. I don't care if there's a patio out there,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
building,
That's
whatever
what
you
we're
want.
thinking.
Yeah, but-
Seating areas.
But I think from a board site plan review, we just wanted to make sure we had that size footprint of a structure for these people to have, a commune place to go to.
Right.
And if there was anything on the outside, we through the plan, we said, hey, you can have bocce courts out there, growing areas, whatever the
Yeah.
home association wants to dream up,
But, yeah, but
they could
the,
go for it,
but the building itself might be 26 or 28,
It
but we will probably accommodate the full 3,000 in area.
so just to summarize, it's shown on the plan, the plans of what has to be built to. We don't need a specific condition for the community center. If it's gonna be changed, we're gonna refer to condition number 25 for major and minor test.
Correct.
There you
Okay?
go.
I'm fine with that, you guys good with
Oh,
that?
yeah, heck
Can we
yeah.
go with that?
You don't know what's gonna be like when you get there and oh, look at the steep banking out there.
And honestly, quite honestly, as these
No.
people want to amend that structure, if they ever desired to, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with you going outside that footprint. I
Okay,
don't think that's really a question, I think it's more of a minimum capacity than it is a maximum capacity.
right.
I mean, they could build all the community service thing they want down there on their dime after this. We just wanted to make sure we gave them a base minimum.
Okay.
Was really our desire, so to speak, that they had something to work with, that's all.
So would the board consider 2,600 square feet a major change or a minor?
And
Just
what's
so
the
we know.
purpose, what's the purpose, what's this 2,600 all about?
I don't know. I mean, talking back and forth with my partner, her father
Well,
and stuff.
we're
and-
just looking at a
We're looking
range,
at
and a lot of it
different
has to do
styles
with
and-
the overhangs, and a lot of it has to do with how we envision the space to be used and what we can accomplish in a design. And a lot of it has to do with the cost of building and what we're gonna ask residents to bear. So we're trying to optimize all of those conditions at once. So we just wanna understand what kind of flexibility we have in being able to do that.
They have it.
You all right?
I'm all right. You better believe it.
You guys all right with that? 26 to 3,000?
Sure.
Just
Great.
gives us
You
flexibility.
want to put that in there,
Yeah.
26 to 3,000? Is
Absolutely.
that good enough? Just add that to that, Peter, somehow?
Very good. Then we don't have to go back to
Dave,
board.
just
for either.
But-
do your magic there? and-
See,
Yeah.
we had proposed language in there that dealt with the community center building. And then in my discussions with Dave, there was never like a plan that was presented that showed. So we were trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that we're showing a 3,000 square foot foundation print on the plan. And their concern is, well, we really don't know exactly what we're gonna build and how it's gonna, what it's gonna look like. We just wanna have the ability that if it ends up being 2,600 square feet or 2,800 square feet, that we have the ability to do that.
Right, so then I guess a reasonable condition is that the community center shall be no smaller than 2,600 square feet. That's the condition.
Good.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And whether it's written there or not, I think what you've said is that with overhangs and outside improvements, it's gonna be equal or greater than 3,000. Is that
Right.
what we-
It could very well be.
Yeah,
Now that
could
you
very
say
well
that,
be.
it
Well,
could
we-
very well be.
Yeah, but when you're talking square footage, you're not talking overhangs, you're talking building, usable footprint.
Correct.
So
Usable,
you can
usable
overhang, you
space.
can put a 50-foot thing off that thing, but that's not counted in your
Right.
square footage.
Right,
A lot of times they do count under roof. That's why I'm saying that. Especially in Florida, they do that.
So is there consensus for that kind of a condition?
I think that the way you word it is perfect with me.
Okay,
That's-
so
that's
what else do you have there?
okay. On that condition or the rest of them?
Well,
Next one.
I think we corrected 8, right? I think you put in
You wanted prevention.
stormwater pollution prevention.
I added
plan.
prevention, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's WPP, yeah.
9 deals with the grading near basin areas.
I added that,
Um,
referencing stairs.
Yeah,
Are you on the orders of condition,
yes,
number 9?
yep,
Page 13.
page 13.
Hold on a second. I'm on the HPDD. Okay, go ahead.
So I think if I understand what is shown on the plan right now, there's only 2 locations on the plan where stairs are shown. Because I think the concern was, if you get next to a basin and it's too steep, they wanted stairs. And I think, Wes, did you show the stairs on the, no? You
That's
didn't?
not, the issue with regards to the trail near the basin had to do with cover over pipe, it had nothing to, and we addressed that on the plan.
Cover over pipe,
Cover over pipe near the, underneath the trail. And we
okay.
addressed that on the last set of revisions to Quinn.
I thought on the plan. Wes,
So there are
it
2
showed
sets of stairs, but they're
Yes.
not near the basin,
Oh, they're
they're-
short of the basin, I understand that.
they're coming up, they're
Steep
coming,
part, right?
Yeah,
they're close to the street, it's
Yeah.
the backyard of where they,
right. One is between 2 units and the other one's down.
yes, and it's the next slope down. There's kind of a tiered slope in the back of the units. And it's closer to the street, it's not associated with the basin.
Okay. So the grading concern that was raised by Quinn
Is no
is
longer.
is no longer a concern because it's on the plan. Okay.
Correct, correct. And the stair thing is taken care of on a separate condition with regards to meeting the mass building codes.
That's building code, you gotta build
Yeah.
a building code, yeah.
So continuing on page 13,
Well, hold on, is there some notion to take condition 9 out, or is there an issue with that
No,
condition?
Stays
no,
as is.
I think it stays
That
as is
stays
now.
as is.
Fine,
Okay.
thank you, that's
Because we were
fine.
just trying to confirm the locations,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
10 and 11 deal with the walking trail. So the way it's worded now, the wording's gone from prior to completion of Phase 2 to after completion of Phase 2. We're concerned with the fact that during construction of Phase 2, we really don't want the public walking around on the site, depending on what's going on. So we prefer to have it so that once the walking trail is done and Phase 2 is completed, that's when the walking trail will be connected to the school walking trail. So that we don't
So what you're saying, if I understand correctly, that the walking trail is really part of Phase 2 construction, Peter,
correct.
and both will be done at the same time. And upon that completion of those 2 things, you'll make the connection up to the school.
And that's the exact
After
word
you've got,
that's the word I used, upon completion, because I didn't want to get caught up in
you make a good point, you don't want
prior
those
to
people,
or
you know,
after,
stop
because
bumping
we
around
really
the
are
area.
concerned, because
Trench or
the
something.
beginning of the walking trail starts at the top of Phase 1,
Phase 1,
and
Yeah.
then when Phase 2 loops around,
Yeah.
it's completed.
yeah.
And
I'm
the
fine with
part,
that language. I'm
the
fine
part
with
that
language.
goes
Anybody have a
between the
problem with that
2
language?
buildings that goes to the school entrance,
Yeah.
that's a part of Phase 2. So upon completion, we'll do the connection.
So take out prior and go upon,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
instead of saying
Prior
prior
to
to
that.
the.
located on the adjacent school property prior to completion, just put upon completion.
All right, fine.
and that will be in both number 10
And 11.
and 11.
Okay.
Well, that's
That's agreeable.
That's common
to the board.
sense. That's common sense, and I like it. Good catch, good call. You really don't want those people bothering
No.
with anything. It's not
And
that
then-
big of a deal.
If we understand it correctly, there's really only one location where the connection's gonna be made at the boundary line. So that there's not,
So that existing trail.
right, it already exists on the ground, because we don't have any survey work, and we don't know what is actually there, we just know it's a walking trail, but this will go right up to the fence and connect,
That's
all
right.
right?
That is correct.
Okay,
That is correct. That's what we understand it. One connection up to the lot line at the existing trail. Wherever that is, just make it out.
They can do what they want on the other
Yep.
side.
Right, you go, good.
Yep.
Okay, next one?
number 13. So we discussed the applicant probably is gonna use the rollout trash bins.
Yep.
And I think what we discussed, that dumpsters may be allowed, but we made an asterisk that we put dumpsters with proper screening may be allowed. I don't know if that, I think we had discussed that. I don't know if it's a concern to the board, but
You know, so,
we doubt that there's gonna be a dumpster there, but later on, if the.
yeah, we talked about it two different ways there, Attorney. So originally, we were discussing whether we had a fixed dumpster, we'd have the fencing around. So that brings up a good point. So if the home association wants to switch to a trash dumpster that gets picked up once a week, I do think you should have some language in here that puts, the fencing around it, the screening fencing, so that it's appropriately done. However, in the last discussion, last meeting, we talked about if for an event, for a one-time, for a weekend event or something like that, they want to bring a dumpster in,
You could,
that you could just use it in one parking space. And it would
Okay.
be good there for a week and then gone.
okay.
So I guess if you want to write it up that way, I got no issues with that as well.
So distinguish between a temporary and a permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, permanent
Yep.
dumpster.
And if it's permanent, just put the appropriate fencing around it. If not, and that's something the home association can do and adjust as days go by.
But if the homeowner association is gonna end up putting a permanent one there, then they should decide where their screen goes, right? I mean, why do you even have to get into that? Your intention is to not have one. If they determine they want one,
It's up to them.
It's kind of a common thing that you do.
yeah, no, I agree. but-
It's kind of like one of those things, like if you don't do it right, because it looks pretty nasty, and, and to be honest with you, when you see those trash guys come up and grab these things, if you don't put them in some kind of guideline, man, they're gonna destroy everything on your site there, and, they'll destroy the fence, but at least it's just a fence, this is my opinion.
And they show up at 5:30 in the morning when everybody's sleeping.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang.
But you guys did say you were gonna do the totes there, so, that was in the meeting notes from last week too, so.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm fine with that. You guys all good with that language, and let them do what they want down the road?
Yeah.
Anything else?
On page 14, condition 15, the curbing at the catch basins. We just wanted to clarify that it was from curb to curb, not like on the actual driveways.
Correct. So the granite curbing is required on the curbing, on the type 3, is it, curbing? And if it's in front of a driveway, it was not required.
Right.
Okay.
As your
Correct.
curb tapers from curb to curb, it did not need granite there. That's why we defined it that way. Your curbing comes along,
Oh, yeah.
drops down,
It drops down to the,
there's, from that point on, does not need granite. Within a driveway.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just defined.
Oh, you
it's
mean
just
curbing at the
defining.
end by the driveways,
Right,
yeah.
on
No,
each
no.
edge.
On
Okay,
the edges of the driveways, no,
So if it's right up tight to it, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It would create, I know.
I think the condition captures the intent of this.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fine, that's absolutely fine.
all right, we already talked about 16. 18C. Testing must be completed prior to beginning of installation of the drain system of each phase development. Because we're doing this in phases. And the testing's gonna need to be done in each phase so we just wanted to clarify that the testing would be completed prior to the beginning of installation of the drainage system of each phase.
Which is what I did here.
Oh, you already
That's
had
what
it?
it says.
Yeah, each phase of each
Yeah, I
development
incorporated that
refers to the
suggestion.
construction phases. He might not have got today's draft.
I sent it out.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, he might not be the one you printed.
Possibly. I had a number of them.
Yeah.
So basically, whatever you
Flying
suggested, I
text,
added
there it is.
here.
Oh, God.
I
Okay,
pretty much
But you
added
can-
them.
If you wanna keep that. and
Okay.
reference it.
And then you sent me Wes's.
Mike, there's another one up
version.
here. Doug's not here if you want his.
You sent me Wes's version, I added those as well.
okay, my next one was gonna be 20, and it looks like that change was incorporated.
Pretty much, whatever you know, if it was reasonable, we just consider it to be minor.
Yeah, Dave said there's a bunch of things that you guys just kind of worked out, and I trust Dave. And
After you sent me Wes's, I added yours to it as well.
You guys are great with the going back and forth,
We
it's
tried.
amazing.
We tried.
the tennis game, man.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Taking the lid right out of your salespeople.
No,
I mean, most of what you suggested was minor in nature, so we,
Yeah, I think it was more wording than anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
oh, and then I think the only other things we wanted to clarify with the board, number 24, the consulting engineer. Can we word it so that as each phase is completed, they go out and inspect, so that it's not just, there's some,
Running a tab.
there's some definition to how many times they're gonna go out there.
I think in that case, if I could, I think using professional practice, I would advocate that Haley Ward works with Quinn to have the inspections done at the right time for benchmarks that are customary.
Okay.
I don't know, do you want to put in a strict schedule here? I think we're willing to work with professional practice. Quinn knows what that is. So,
Okay,
So if they're mutually agreed upon.
yeah,
inspections.
mutually agreed upon inspections, but not looking to be overly burdensome with inspections.
I didn't want them just every single day.
No.
No, and I believe we discussed this 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
That this would not just be an open checkbook
No,
for these guys to go to town on these guys.
it'd be mutual.
Absolutely,
Yes.
and we discussed, certain aspects of the job, obviously before paving, something like that, upon, utilities, just kind of the way anybody would inspect your utilities. I mean, it's no different than, the drainage, the sewer, et cetera, just making sure all that was properly inspected. So I would think you guys can work that out. You must do that all the time with these guys. I know it's done all the time.
I agree with, that's how I try to draft it generally like this, to let you folks.
And phase by phase is more than adequate, obviously.
And their scope is drainage and roadway, right? Because the town's gonna be required to inspect the water and the sewer themselves, I think is how we talked about at the last meeting too, so.
That's true.
That is true.
So should we add language about that drainage and roadway scope?
I don't think you need to. You have the DPW director, that's his purview. We do have staff for that.
Yeah, and I
There's
think,
different things that we don't have.
It's kind of all understood, guys.
yeah, agreed upon
I don't think
benchmarks.
we're looking to set you up for the kill here. I hope
That's good.
I hope we'll help you on that feeling.
Right.
But,
okay.
whatever makes you feel comfortable, that's gonna be the way it goes, that's the way we do
And then
it.
I think the last one would be 26. I think we just wanted to clarify that the trees would be replaced with same or similar non-invasive species, because I think that's what we show on the plan.
I will tell you that I took that verbatim from the findings of fact. It talked about prompt replacement, it doesn't prescribe otherwise. So I would suggest whatever's reasonable here
Okay.
in terms of replacement. The bylaw itself only says dead and diseased trees shall be replaced promptly. The recommendation from town council was immediately, or at the latest within the next growing season. So I think, once again, we're not trying to be, we just want, if there's anything dead or dying, just have it replaced.
You're just looking for some latitude on what type of tree and shrub goes back in.
If we
Is that what you're
can't
asking
get
for,
it.
Peter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think they have that with this
Or
condition.
even when we first plant, like if suddenly the state decides one of our items on the list is invasive, we want to be able to replace it with same or similar.
I mean, I don't personally have a problem
It's
with
not a
that.
big deal.
I know it's hard getting things today, so,
There you go.
you know.
So what's your suggestion is to,
Just with the same or similar,
Same as similar,
non-invasive
non-invasive.
species.
as long as-
all right, so that's the last of the conditions.
Yeah.
Just one question I had, and I'm not an expert here, but when I read the waivers on page 10, starts on 10 and goes to 11, you know, just reading one waiver here, you know, like number 3, you know, drain pipe material. HDPE drain pipe is proposed, RCP pipe is required. But it doesn't say like it was given. It just says RCP was required, like,
What
where does it
I've-
say we gave them these waivers? I
What
guess?
I've done in the preamble at the top of the paragraph on the waivers,
Yep,
what I say here is that the HPDD Review Board granted for good reason the following waivers for the site development
Okay.
project. Note, the waiver request is from the subdivision regulations section listed except as otherwise referenced. The waiver request allows what the applicant proposed underlined instead of what is required for a given standard or specification. So I was just trying to spell out what was proposed
yep,
and what is required, and
okay.
indicating that for good reason, the board did grant the waivers.
They gave it to them.
And
Beautiful.
I want it to be consistent across the
Okay.
board, so that you have proposed, required in
And
terms.
we gave them all of them, so I guess that works nice and short and sweet.
That's correct.
Understood. All right.
And then I think the only other, I'm not sure if we've discussed this doesn't have anything to do with the decision, but they have to, they're trying to finalize their financing. And typically, if this were going to be a subdivision roadway, there'd be some type of a bond or some type of assurance that things would be built accordingly. I don't think there's a requirement that they put some type of a bond in place, or I'm not sure, is there gonna be a request that some type of performance bond for the driveways be approved?
I missed that. Jesus.
No, I don't think you missed it. It's not, this is not a subdivision.
Not a subdivision.
In the case of a subdivision, the purpose of a bond is if the roads are not completed by the applicant, the town will complete the roads for the public's benefit. In this case, the public benefit is limited because this is a private development and that the roads are never intended to be taken. So you wouldn't ordinarily put in,
Yeah, so you would take back over the development.
I think ultimately,
Right, and I think that's where your surety becomes, is they would be the,
Well, the town's stuck with it, right? So the town requests that to make sure they don't get stuck with the bill finishing it after people have moved in. And obviously, they're paying taxes, but these people will be paying taxes as well.
But to Dave's point, because it's kind of a, we've kicked this around, these are gonna be maintained as private roadways.
Yeah, no, I
So
know.
typically,
It's different.
a municipality requests a performance bond, there's different kinds. There's three different kinds, to make sure that, okay, they start building houses, there's homes there, and all of a sudden, builder A goes out of business, what do?
Yeah.
And the town wants to have the ability to attach it to finish the street, build it out so people have their roadway. These are gonna be private roadways. Their lender just keeps asking, you know, is there one or isn't there? And
No, it's a good question, and, you know, my only concern is, you know, these are still people that live in town. It's a private development, it's a private roadway. I just don't want to see a bunch of people get duped either. I'm not saying I'm responsible for them, because you buy a piece of property, you better, you know, you get your lawyer and make sure you're getting what you're supposed to be getting.
How
You know,
do
if
you,
the road's
how do
not
you make
completed-
sure that the roadways are built to the standard they're supposed to be built? I mean, to Peter's point, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, if, you know, they put in, let's say, you know, the base of the roadway, and you're gonna sell houses at that point, right?
Yeah.
And then they go out of business. How do you make sure that that top coat gets put on if you don't have a bond?
so I,
At that point, the project would be sold at auction or something to that effect.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
But still doesn't assure you the roads are gonna get built.
So
But it's still not a subdivision.
Well, it indirectly it does, because these conditions are gonna remain in place.
Correct.
And so, if builder A goes out of business, and, you know, the real question is can they sell a unit to somebody without the road being complete? That's the real question.
Well,
And I don't have that answer. I'm not
You
legally smart enough
don't,
to
you
know
don't
that.
want the road complete unless the subdivision.
Well, it happens all the
is-
time in a subdivision.
It happens all the time in the subdivision.
So
It
why-
does with the binder coat down, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
But they're continuing to build out the road, so yeah, you know, going down the line. It could happen, it couldn't happen, you know,
So
and that's,
what I would suggest, Chris,
yep,
okay? And I just wanted to bring this up because it is an important point for both sides.
It is.
They need to have
They need
some
to know,
clarity
yeah.
for the lender, and
we'll give it to them tonight.
typically, what I always try to do is, there's some type of a covenant that's in place that you can't sell a unit, you can't get a certificate of occupancy unless you're to a certain point.
Yeah.
And then what typically remains is maybe a binder code or some touch things here and there,
Yeah.
so that the roadway and the roadway utilities are built to a point where they're functioning. A lot of times you don't want to put down the final coat because you still got construction going
No,
on and all that stuff.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know, if there's not going to be any type of a covenant or a bond that's going to be required, we can just work with the conditions so that once we get to binder coat, occupancy permits can be issued. Because then that's going to mean that.
I'm fine with that,
That's going to mean the
Personally?
majority.
Yes.
you know,
You okay
Right,
with
but
that?
he's talking about finished codes, so that's where he's
Well,
trying to go.
I'm fine with the binder coat and
Right,
start selling
right.
units,
Right,
just like any other subdivision.
but you're talking about who's responsible if something happens to us
Yeah.
to do the finish. That's what
Correct.
he's talking about.
And, you know, it's gotta be these people, I mean, it ain't gonna be the town, because, you know, so if we, you know, if this is the deal, you know, the homeowners association, and those people that live on those particular roads are gonna have to pay for this. Or they just live with an unfinished road.
Right.
Now, what does the town do? Now, we have a road, you know, catch basins an inch and a half high, et cetera. So-
But it's.
If you were gonna require a bond just for the finish coat, that would be a relatively insignificant bond, would it not?
So,
Well,
what we,
a 5,000
Can we,
feet
can,
of road.
can I just shoot a crazy idea here?
yeah,
Can there just be like some type of, like buyer beware? Like if, like you're buying this unit, the finished coat isn't down. If the builder goes out of business, you're responsible for ponying up your portion of finishing this road, but it has to get done.
I know,
How, you know,
I was looking for when Sharon Everett and myself and Mike and everybody were negotiating the LDA, Sharon prepared a development agreement that's gonna be recorded with the deed. And I think she may have put something in there. So I'll double check that. And then I just wanted to bring it up in all fairness,
yeah,
so that we didn't go after the fact. And to your
I
point,
appreciate that, because I should have thought of it, and just this issue in general, because it's a big issue when you're doing a subdivision.
And I don't know
That's why
how
I'm mad
it
at
might
myself
come to
personally.
bear, but we do have the engineer that will be retained to make sure that we've done compliance. So maybe Peter can kind of think about how that might tie in to making sure that we've met the requirements for each phase.
You know, what if we did this? What if we did this somehow? I'm gonna work for the first two phases. And you couldn't start the next phase until the last one's finished coated. And if builder A goes out of business, or whoever takes it over is gonna have to finish the last phase, and then he gets his permit for the next phase. But on the third phase, you're kind of left hanging. But at that point, you're gonna have 140 units that are gonna have to pony up and pave for the town to accept this. But what recourse do we have?
Town doesn't have to accept it. 'cause it's
Well,
not
no,
town road.
but to complete this site plan,
Yeah,
to sign off on this, if it's not finished paved, how does the town sign these orders off? You know, at
so
the end of
maybe,
it?
I think we have a condition in there that
I don't wanna make you have a bonding company,
requires
honestly.
that the Quinn and Haley Ward are gonna work together to make sure the stuff is done completely. So they're gonna certify whether it's done or not. So maybe we can add some language that takes this into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, God, I hate my bonding company personally.
Yeah, question-
Those guys are brutal.
question
They're
regarding-
necessary evil.
regarding bonding, I mean, can't the bank require a bond of the construction company?
So the bank won't require it, but what the banks, one of the options is that the lender would give the town, they call it a tripartite agreement, where the developer, the lender, and the town all agree that the lender will hold a certain cushion of the loan to make sure that the actual gets done. Or what is commonly done is, there's two parts to it. Developer will sign an agreement that says, I won't sell any houses until all the utilities are built. And then, once they get to a point where they're ready to start selling houses, they'll come back to the town and say, we're 95% complete. The 5% that remains, A, B, and C, it costs $20,000. We'll put 20,000 plus in an account to satisfy the town that the work will get done.
That's not bad, I like that idea.
That's typically what happens.
Yeah, you can put your bid bond up or put a cash check up, right? You know, when you do public work, when you bid those, you can do either one, so that's reasonable.
But,
I-
but we still have the issue of, it's not really, it's not a subdivision,
Right.
so we're not dealing with those parts of Mass General laws, so.
Well, it's not a subdivision, but I still think the town has an obligation to make sure it's done right. And
I agree.
there's no reflection on them. I fully expect it will be, but I think you have to look out for the
What are you
best
comfortable
interest of,
Of these new people, new citizens of our town,
The agreement.
you know, they're gonna be paying taxes, and they're gonna have a road that's not complete.
Yeah.
It's not fair they get to pay taxes and don't get
Right.
the benefit of a fresh new road.
Also,
I would be, I mean, in general, I would almost be amenable to, for phases 1 and 2, you can't get phase 2 permit until phase 1's paved.
That's it right there.
You can't get phase 3 permit until phase 2 is paved.
That's it.
but
And then-
are you then gonna be running construction equipment over that paved section?
No,
No, because it's not gonna be, they won't put a final binder coat down until construction's done.
Yeah. I'm just saying phase by phase.
What would a
Right.
bond cost for the final coat?
It depends.
Yeah, it's the dollar value, so
So typically, Mike,
it's a 5,000.
so let's say this plays out the way we think it'll play out. They'll say to Quinn, all right, we've done all these utilities, go out and inspect them.
Yep.
Quinn might come back and say, all right, everything's complete except for 3 items.
Yep.
Then we get an estimate on what those 3 items cost. And then we figure out a contingency. You know, usually it's 1.5 times, whatever, like if something costs 10 grand, all right, put 15,000
Yeah, I get you.
aside. I think what we might be able to incorporate, Chris, is that, to your point, phase 1, if they're happy, good, you move on to phase 2. If they're happy, good, you move on to phase 3. When we get to phase 3,
Just-
before we close out the project, we can work with the lender and say, you know, we'll reserve.
X amount of money.
Yeah, we'll,
You don't
Because
wanna-
phase
we don't
3,
wanna
really,
burden
guys,
some.
and quite honestly, phase 3 is just those 2 middle runs.
right,
I mean, it's not a lot of money to finish coat those,
That's
in the
No.
scheme of the project. I mean,
Right.
it's, you know, for your common person, yeah, it's a lot of pavement. Yeah, but-
I mean, you don't wanna be burdensome, but I think you have to have some mechanism. in
Exactly.
place.
Mike, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's just, you know, not trying to crimp your style, and they know, you know, bonding
That's,
companies,
that's a good point, because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
middle,
yeah, yeah.
third
We won't
phase
ask
is
for the
inside
approval
of the
for-
finished
for the
road.
year after it's all done.
right, so you're not gonna put,
No.
they're not gonna put the finished coat down until all 3 phases are
That's
completed.
what I
Because
thought.
the third phase is the
We're not gonna,
internal.
we're not gonna put down a finished coat on phase 1,
That's, that's
because
what I
you,
just said.
because you still have to get, so that's why we'll,
You could maybe do 1, but that's about it, maybe. Up before you get to the,
right,
before you get to that,
Come
but
to
you're not
third
gonna do
phase.
2.
no,
You're not gonna do 2.
He's correct.
So, but the reason this came up is because the lending company brought it up as an issue, from what I understand. And when you do your
it wasn't really an issue, it was just a question.
question,
Because they're trying to evaluate and make sure that the financing that's required is in place.
okay,
So we didn't want to go to them and say, yeah, no, there's no bond requirement. And then all of a sudden, we get, you know, 6 months to a year into it, and it's like, hey, we need a bond.
well, I mean, I'm surprised. There are many construction projects that lenders get involved with that have bonds that don't involve the tri agreement with towns. And I'm surprised that it wouldn't, that they wouldn't require the bond on this.
So keep in mind, when a municipality, when a planning board approves a subdivision plan that creates new roadways and roadway utilities that will eventually become public ways to the town, that's when a planning board would specifically require the developer, how are you going to ensure to us that these roadways get built? That's part of the approval. With this particular process that we've been going by, it's a site plan. So we're not dealing with subdivision approval, okay? And even though your regulations say the roadways have to be built according to subdivision regulations, because these roadways are not going to be turned over at the end of the day to the town would ultimately be the one receiving a finished product or an unfinished product. And you wouldn't want to receive an unfinished product and not have the money to finish it. So that's why you have those three different options to impose or to agree to with the developer at the beginning when there's an approval. Now, there's nothing that I could find that said a bond is required for this site plan. I just thought it was, I would rather resolve it now so that the board's aware of it. We can go back to the lender with some confidence and say, here's how we worked it out. You know, they're gonna be allowed to build phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, but when we get to phase 3, the town's gonna want some assurance at that point that how much work is remaining, how much would it cost. Give us some type of a letter from the lender that says there's a reserve if it's needed.
Okay, and again, I just want to be clear. So when you go to start phase 3, there'll be a conversation with Quinn and your team
Right.
that states, hey, we need $100,000 to finish coat phase 1 and 2. Let's just say it's $100,000, and everybody agrees on that. And then your lender's going to hold back that money, or keep it off to the side, whatever, so that that they can cover that cost should anything happen to these guys. Now, and then you can start phase 3 construction, and away you go. And when you get to the end of phase 3 and everything's bindered, and you start selling units in phase 3, before you, like, when are we gonna hold back for phase 3, Peter? When are you thinking?
So I think maybe what we can do, Chris, and
Before you start selling units?
maybe this makes sense, okay?
Yep.
If Quinn's gonna be doing inspections and reporting to the HPDD board, yep, everything's done. Maybe we can have them say, everything's done except for this, so that you have an idea, if it's just a binder coat, how much roadway it is and what the estimate would be to finish that binder coat. So that when we get to phase 3 and they start selling units, we'll have the same thing. We can have Quinn and Haley Ward say, yep, this is how much roadway is, this is how much, because,
$25,000, and then that gets put aside.
right, because ideally, they want to be finished construction of all the units and have them ready to sell so that no more construction vehicles are going in on these roadways, ripping them up so that they got to constantly patch them and repair them. They just want to do it once. So I think if we coordinate our efforts with Quinn and Haley Ward, as they come in and say to this board, yep, things are done, things are done, things are done, you'll know what isn't done, so that we'll be able to sort of keep in mind what type of a reserve might be needed, and we'll get some type of a letter from the lender that says, you know, there's still adequate loans, and if need be, we can set aside this as a cushion to get it completed.
So is that gonna be a condition? And how do you word that? And it's a rhetorical question, how do you word it, Mr. Attorney?
Well, it typically, isn't a condition because it's usually a separate document
Right.
that
But in this case.
is entered into, so.
I think it almost needs to be. Do you see an issue with it being a condition, Peter?
I'd really have to get, I'd really would have a conversation with the lender. Because it's gonna affect how they process their loan.
That seems like the right.
Right,
Approach,
because
yeah.
they're the ones that asked you, because they're
Correct.
trying to set aside.
Correct.
You know, and again, it might help you, and I gotta be honest, I mean, I know you don't wanna have construction traffic on fresh pavement, but I mean, once you've done phase two, I mean, I gotta be honest with you, how much, you know, you're gonna have some concrete trucks, you're gonna, you know, it's not gonna be brutal. I mean, and I'm just saying, the only reason why I say that is because it you know, to the bank, it's less exposure. If you're just paving as you go, then there's no big issue. You don't have to keep aside $500,000 for paving, you know, you're going small increments at a time. I don't know, I mean, I can tell you this, I mean, I'm flexible to the issue, but I just want you to know, I mean, and like Mike said, I mean, our concern is just that, we just wanna make sure these people don't get left hanging. You know, I know it's the town normally, but in also respect, these people are gonna be paying full taxes and they're gonna have a road that's not complete. They're gonna have to pony up for it, so I think they deserve some protection. And I'm willing to, I'm open to anything.
No, was there a question to
If phase three is here, could the construction vehicles go that way so they can avoid that?
Well, phase three's in the middle, so
No, there's no
phase
request to
one's
do
here,
that.
then they
Right.
build a loop road.
I know you were
Phase three is
exploring
just
the
these two
idea, and that's
roads
as far as I'm
here. So
concerned.
you're gonna have to access a portion of it. But there's no reason why, like this outer rim could not be finish coated, because the path of least resistance is coming in this way.
Right,
They're
right,
not gonna
right.
come down like
I
that.
see, yeah.
So that's why, if it helps them
Okay.
mitigate
Yeah,
their
yeah.
banking
Yeah,
concern, like pave some of the thing, you know,
Right, right,
cut
right.
that back
Yeah,
down.
I know.
You know,
There's
so it's really no
there's
so
an exception, it's difficult,
Yeah.
because you don't,
I'd like to work with them, I just wanna make sure it's protects people,
Right.
that's all.
into that.
Let them get creative there and see if they can come up with
Phase,
Yeah.
and it leaves a space
Right.
of unfinished road where finished units are.
Right.
It's complicated.
I mean, you guys agree with that?
How about
Yeah.
we just say
That we just gotta kind of protect these people a little bit, they don't get left hanging holding the check at the end
Discuss
of the
whether
night.
set aside any bond
Right,
requirements.
everybody wants to
sounds like
go
that's what
and,
the
you know,
lender's
drink
trying
scotch
to
and
do.
eat lobster, but they don't
That's
want
what
to stick around to the
Okay.
table and live with it.
I'd like to put the burden on the bank, on the lender.
How about if we just say that upon completion of phase two, when they move into phase three, we'll set aside some type of a bond or tri-party agreement with the lender
Yep.
that ensures that the remaining binder coat for phase one and two and phase three will be completed.
You mean finish coat?
Finish coat,
Yeah,
I'm
finish.
sorry, yes.
Possibly curved.
Yeah, you know, I'm fine with that. You know,
Okay.
it's a, you know, it's a loose kind of thing. I'm not trying to, certainly do, I mean, I want to see you do the project, I want to see you
Right.
get your financing.
Right,
Again, I just want to make sure those people are protected, and I think you'd appreciate that.
right.
That's my only concern. So I'm willing to let you guys come up with anything with your lender, talk to them if you want, and I'm sure you can figure something out with them.
Okay.
And
That works.
that wording is fine to me.
That works.
Dave?
So we're talking about another condition here?
I kind of think so, right? I think it's just another condition.
One more time with the
I
language.
think what we should say is that the applicant will provide the HPDD board upon completion of phase two. Items, for items that require bonding,
A security or surety.
bonding
surety.
or assurance
Estimate of unfinished work.
for
It really is.
for unfinished
Possibly some
roadway and
sidewalks.
utility work.
Right.
With the cost set aside, yeah, and whichever manner you guys wanna deem that, whether you go get a bond, whether you put a check in the account, or the
Right,
banks
because-
hold the money.
The
It's all-
the comfort you'll have is that, Quinn, if we say, okay, we're done, we think there's only 200 feet of linear road, Quinn goes out and says, it's really 250. You'll at least have that assurance
Yeah.
as to what remains,
Yeah.
and we can figure it out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, asphalt's nothing to figure out, we can agree on that, the cost of that, you know.
Because it also depends on the timing. If it's the
True.
dead of winter, you're
Yeah,
not
the
gonna wanna
plant's
go
shut down,
do
and
it.
you gotta wait anyways.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that'll be, that'll drag out a few months anyways, so. No, again, any one of those forms of surety, be it a bond, with the bank holds us back, something with a tripartite agreement, I'm all fine with that, and I'll let you just finalize that language, but I think if there's some condition to that effect, Dave, I think, as a board, I'd agree that we can move along with that.
So what I just want to say here is, so I'll be looking for something from the applicant.
Yep.
I have my notes. I'd like for you to folks to just capture these things, and
Yeah.
I'll compare it to mine. I will work those into this decision tomorrow morning, and get that recorded in the morning. But I would like to get this information as soon as possible, so I can just,
So that means you're gonna get it to them in the morning.
One clarification, if a bond or surety is required, would it be between the applicant and the town, or between the applicant and the lender?
There are a few different ways of surety, I guess, that you can do, so I think they probably want to leave some leeway of what surety they want to use at the time of phase
A
3.
surety would be a private insurance company.
It could be,
CNA
there's a couple
Insurance
different ways to do it.
provides bonds.
Yeah, there's different ways that a bond can be put up to the town. You can put aside money in a separate account that the town holds.
Yep.
Or you could have a bonding company issue a bond to the applicant that the town's the beneficiary of.
So I think that answers your question, Jim. It's to the town.
I was gonna say, are you asking, is it the town included in that, or is it between
Yes.
the association and Hyperclassic?
It seems to me if we worded something
That's a good point.
that,
Does that go to the association of the town?
You know, because once the town got involved in this,
Well, the town has to approve the, end
but
of
then
the
again,
plans.
who guarantees it
Well,
gets
the
done?
problem is if this bond goes to the town, now you could be talking a much higher cost for labor to install this at prevailing wages.
Yeah.
Whereas if you keep this with the condo association,
Right.
they can hire anybody, Crucial Paving to come up.
So it has to be, the
and just do it.
association has to be established before this can.
You'll have that established prior to phase 2 completion.
So,
I believe what you're saying is correct, because is this a private
You read that?
development?
Yeah, I don't think the town wants to
I
take
gotta
those.
take my
That's
glasses
exactly
off.
right.
Right.
That's
It's gonna
what
raise
I'm
more
thinking.
costs,
The town just wants to be
more,
protected and make sure.
more bureaucracy. I mean, town don't move
Right.
fast
That's
So-
exactly right.
like an association can,
So, something to this effect. Prior to the commencement of Phase 2, Phase 1 to be substantially completed per town's review engineer. Prior to the commencement of Phase 3, Phase 2 to be substantially completed per town review engineer. Additionally, adequate surety to be in place to finish project roadway and utilities prior to the commencement of Phase 3.
With surety between the association and the applicant, not the town.
Not the town.
Okay.
I don't think the town should be involved, and that might be a question for town council, but personally, I think it's a bad idea for the town to be getting this bond.
Okay.
I think it should go to the
That's another reason,
association
yeah.
that
Okay.
you and your applicant create.
And that's fine, the association will be in place.
That's probably better, and it
'Cause
probably.
they're gonna have to hire someone to come out and do this, or
Probably-
your lender,
probably
Jim
be
just said,
better.
or your lender. If you wanna do it your lender, and that's a little safer, because they'll get it done. And, you
It might
don't
be
get
better
Mary
with the
Jane
lender.
take fleecing the account at
Sure.
the condo
Decision
association,
that might be-
running off to Florida.
Okay.
That's the last draft.
Talk about, I don't know,
That's
panning
like
into the
funky.
fire there.
That was
You'd be
my-
That was
surprised.
Mike's copy? That was Mike's copy.
Sorry, anyway.
No, if he wrote it, you want
No,
to
he
do it.
didn't.
Oh,
That
I'm
was-
sorry.
When I was reading off my additions, he said, no, it's already in there.
Oh, okay.
And then somebody gave me one that showed.
Are you done with it?
I'm done with it.
And that way there, if it's in the lender's you know, if it's in your lender's possession, it can be them, or it can be, you know, CNA or somebody, or whatever. or a
Right,
check,
exactly.
As far as you put aside with your lender, however you wanna do that, collateral on another, you know, whatever else you got going, whatever you can do, I don't care.
Okay,
All right, then.
I don't have that
we,
if you want
we
to just,
we can give it to
You
him.
rather go over it.
you want to have the language about the association between.
No, I didn't add that.
Alright.
Yeah, because at that point, the unit owners association will be established,
Right.
obviously.
The worry I have with the homeowners association though is what happens if the homeowners association takes the money and runs? I like his idea of the lender better.
Right. Right. The lender's
So I have,
Put it this way, if there's
Because ultimately, the lender's gonna get, if they did go back, the lender's gonna get stuck with the
if
property.
there's a problem, the lender's the one that's going to foreclose.
He's gonna get it anyway.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So they're gonna wanna be
The lender's gonna
charged.
make it, the lender's gonna make it a condition that they get that bond, that's why they wanna know right now anyway, so.
Yeah.
If you just give it to them, it's gonna probably make your financing go smoother anyway.
Right, exactly.
Which is-
All right.
Okay.
But better that we discussed it than.
No, you know, Peter, I really appreciate
We
your
did-
honesty and
we-
upfrontness,
We
it goes a
didn't
long way.
discuss it.
You guys have been top notch the whole way through, and that certainly epitomizes your upfrontness and not trying to get away with something on the backslide, you know? All right, anything else you guys got? Any other more bombshells you want to drop?
I don't think so.
I'll throw something.
Ronnie, but it takes a little too much, I'm just saying.
it's too late, because
Also-
all the conditions stop after this thing closes.
Just something that, your sidewalks in the thing are gonna be coming out in the upper part, not the lower one, but the upper road is where your sidewalk,
Trail, you mean?
well, not the trail, no, I'm talking your sidewalks internal.
Yep.
Do they go to the road?
to
They're
Maple?
gonna
They go
follow to
Rutland.
the road, to your entrance,
Well, they go to Rutland Heights Way.
Yes.
Yes.
to Rutland Heights Way.
Yep. Put your handicap ramps there to tie into the Rutland Heights Way.
Good, but what I was gonna throw at you, keep your eyes open, if you ever see a light or push a button, you know, for a crosswalk or something like that, being the elderly or older people there, we have too many sidewalks in town that are not well lit, and boy, I tell you, we've had very close calls. And we've had one girl many years ago got really hurt bad, so if you can find something like that in your travels, get it, see if we
It's the Rutland Heights Way is town.
Is a town, I know,
So
but they can donate it. I just don't wanna see people hurt.
Well, there's a sidewalk right there going up across the street, and,
Yeah.
you know, if there was, I mean, Dick makes a good point, I mean, just having a little bit of,
Maybe a
you know,
solar.
light
pedestrian
cross
sign.
right there, that's on their property, they can put the light in their property,
You're doing
just shine a
lights
little,
anyway, so.
maybe,
Tell them
maybe
that.
one more post light would suffice out there, Ron.
Chris,
Or solar light.
Dick, maybe it's a solar lamp there at the same time.
Yeah, something like that.
Exactly, yeah, just something to help them out.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so, both sides here, David, Peter, we good with all these items and gone through everything?
I
think so.
I have no other questions. I'll just put it up to the board members here. How do we feel about bringing this to a vote tonight? And do we have any other things to talk about, discuss? Questions, concerns? Comments? Complaints?
Well, Dave should have all the information by tomorrow.
Yep, I have some things that have been drafted here, I have my notes, I'm gonna get information from them tomorrow.
Yep.
Hyperclassic comes tomorrow to just confirm it, and
you gonna be able to do that in the morning?
I will do it in the morning.
He's doing it
I
tonight.
might do it tonight.
There you go.
He's only driving home, he can do that with the other hand.
Maybe we'll
I
stop
mean,
across
personally,
street
I'm at the
first.
point where I don't think there's anything else to discuss or ask. I think we've kind of gone over everything. We've talked through all the issues. Seems like everybody's on the same page. There's some clerical things to work out, some legal, wording to put finishing touches on. But I think, some type of vote, and that we, like David suggested, we sign this. We vote. If we vote to approve, we sign this. And it's obviously to this thing getting worked out tomorrow or whatever. But it just prevents another meeting and this thing dragging out for another God knows how many weeks, just to kind of go through some legal things that I think we can expeditiously get done tomorrow by the end of this week. What does the board feel about that? And Dave, how do you feel about that?
I'm gonna be working on this tomorrow morning.
Okay.
That's my expectation. I'd like to have this thing filed.
Do you feel we're out of line voting on this evening?
No, I think,
Signing this
I
page and
think,
getting this
no, I
signed
think
off
in good
tonight?
faith, you've heard the conditions. We went through them all. You have some new ones. We have an agreement. I think with the agreement's been codified. I think in good faith, you can sign this. I think, like you say, you've dealt with all the substantial issues. Thank you very much for having a very thorough hearing on this, looking at this thing in great detail. So I think this board has done excellent work, and we appreciate the work that you've done, at least from the staff perspective, so.
Thanks, Dave. You too, man. You've been busting it too. Nice job. Been a good team, yeah. Tamika, everybody. Mike and the other guys here.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a good team effort. But, you know, honestly, you know, Peter, you know, just you being upfront and honest tonight, you guys have been good the whole way through, Ron and everybody, Wes, and that's why I'm willing to kind of do this way. You know, just let's not get too formal about this thing. I mean, you guys have worked through everything so far. Let's just tidy everything up tomorrow. Let's vote on this thing and let's get this thing in the rearview mirror. And let's let the town and the builder get on with things. Finish their, you know, work up.
Yeah, and it has been quite the endeavor, but it's been enjoyable working with the board, with Dave, with Mike. Everybody in the town's been very cooperative, so Hyperclassic is very appreciative of that. And they look forward to building a top-notch project in Rutland.
Yeah, we want your success. Your success is the town's success. It really is. And that's why, you know, we want you guys here. And we're glad to have you because you guys are you're straight shooters. And, you know, everybody's in business to make some money, but you know what? You guys come up, you're up front, you're honest, and we appreciate that. And I can certainly appreciate you guys who just want to get it done right.
We really want to thank the board. They've been very, very good, very informative and cooperative. Also, we want to thank Wes because switching engineers was a very, very good thing for us. It made this project go very well.
Yep. Yeah, he's been a good man. Done a heck of a job. Yep. And you brought in other good people too, the traffic guys, everybody else.
Absolutely.
Been a good crew, so. Yeah, no, we couldn't be happier. A lot of work, a lot of details. It's a big project, you know. But personally, someone wants to make a
Looking for a
motion.
motion
we can,
to accept the formal site
If I
plan.
may.
You first have to close the hearing and then you take the motion on the
We gotta
decision.
close
I'll
the
make a
hearing.
motion to close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Second. Is there any discussion on closing the hearing for the Harbor Classics Home formal site plan decision? Hearing none? All in favor of closing?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, the motion's unanimous. Do we have a motion?
And I'll make a motion to accept the formal site plan decision, age-restricted residential housing development with Harbor Classic Homes, the definitive site plan decision with Harbor Classic Homes,
And just to offer, subject to conditions.
subject to conditions
Yep.
as outlined in.
As outlined tonight, and what they'll do tomorrow. Yep.
Second that.
Okay. We have a second by Dick. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor to approve the formal site plan decision as prepared tonight by Dave with the amendments made tonight and that'll be made tomorrow. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing and seeing none. The motion is approved, or this formal site plan decision is approved unanimously.
Hallelujah.
Hey,
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
congratulations.
And this page here, we will sign.
Yes,
this.
yeah, there's a signature page.
You know,
You do your
Chris,
honors, Your Honor?
Chris, I have one thing I'd like to add.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Dave,
Rockstar.
Yeah,
never,
Yeah.
never would we get this done.
No, it was absolute
He's been the
rockstar.
glue to hold this whole thing together.
Yeah.
And
Oh, no.
the
The
people-
glue is there.
Well,
He is the king.
people in town need to know what he's contributed to this, because it
Yeah.
never would have happened without him.
He's the glue. She knows where to put the glue.
Okay, has anybody mentioned Tamika?
Yeah,
I just did.
We just said, no,
Okay,
Dave may be
good,
the glue,
good.
but she's the
Okay,
one who spreads the
excellent,
glue.
because I was
right
buried
where
over
we
here
need
and
it all.
taking pictures of the moment, and I was like, oh my god, there's the real glue.
Use this, we'll use the same pen, thank you.
No, really, the whole town, I mean, even,
That we have to type
You know,
up, right?
everything that Mike and his group has done to get this, these
Oh
guys
my
to the
goodness.
table.
Team
Yes,
Yeah,
yep,
it's a good thing, so I'm glad, you know, the whole town's been on board with this.
yep, amazing.
It's nice to be
Amazing
wanted when
effort.
you come to a town, you know, sometimes it's not so, not so
So
lovingly, you know, some towns are pretty tough on buildings. Once you can take your town.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. You could just,
Charles R. Williams.
This is Rutland, don't worry.
There you go, Chris. Last but not least. And then,
Wow.
Good job, you guys.
Thanks, man.
Dave, here you go, brother. Is this your pen, sir? There you go, my man. Thank you. All right.
I thought I would send it, I thought I would.
So I
send
think
it
at this
to-
point,
emotions to,
is there any other new business or any other business? All
do we
right.
need
please
another
no.
meeting or not yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I
know.
We can take a break, for at least take the rest of the summer off.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
we got the salt out
Don't
thing
you wanna
next.
do this all over again?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? None,
All right.
unanimous. We're adjourned.
Thank you very much.